When we tell our stories, people don't always have great reactions. What are we supposed to do with that? Hello, wonderful people. I am Jo Beckwith, and welcome back to Trauma Talk. Thank you for tuning in. I want to talk today about what we should do when people have negative reactions to our stories. I talked a lot about why it's so important to tell your story and break the silence when you feel safe and able to, and why that is so beneficial in our lives. But the problem is that sometimes people have really negative reactions. Sometimes the words that people say stick with you for years after. Sometimes people respond with questions like, well, why did you stay? Or, why did you go out alone? Or you didn't see that coming? Just horrible responses that I don't think are often intended to cause great damage, but oftentimes do. They amplify the feelings of shame and guilt and all of these negative feelings that often come with being a survivor anyways. There are obviously a lot of different ways to responding to people when they respond to you like this, and I think it really comes down to where you are in your story and also what you feel their intention was. We have a problem in America where the cultural narrative, how we talk about victims of sexual assault and domestic violence, is really inaccurate. And we have newscasters saying things about 14-year-olds who were drunk at a party, which a lot of 14-year-olds are. Let's get really honest. She shouldn't have been drinking at that party, when multiple 18-year-old men sexually assault her and videotape it and are suggesting that she is at fault in some way. We just have a real problem in America with the way that we talk about victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. And I think that shows oftentimes in the way that we respond to people around us if we don't know what it's like to be in the position of a survivor. So when I would tell people my story, I quickly found that people will have a variety of different responses, sometimes good, sometimes bad. When they had bad reactions at first, honestly, I didn't know what to do. I felt kind of paralyzed, because what are you supposed to say to someone when their response is, well, Jordan, you shouldn't have gone down and spent time alone at his house in the first place, so just implying that it's my fault, implying that the guilt is in my hands and showing zero compassion. Or when their response is, you need to forgive him immediately or Jesus is gonna be angry with you. Neither one of those things is helpful things, and when you're telling people your story, you're looking for at least compassion, if nothing else. Oftentimes people do respond with compassion, but when they don't, what do? I think we have a couple different options. One is, if you have the words, tell them how you feel. Tell them how their words affect you. That's a really unhelpful comment, that hurt me. What you're saying suggests guilt or suggests blame, and it's not my fault. But the problem is, oftentimes we don't have those words. I struggle when people say stuff like that to me. Still, I found words, I found my voice years later, but you're kind of caught off guard when people say stuff like that to you, and especially if it's nearer to your trauma, it is hard to find your voice. And so if someone said something like that to you and you didn't know how to react, that's okay. Maybe you go to them after the fact and explain why that wasn't an okay reaction to have. Or maybe they aren't the people to have in your life. They aren't the people to go to for support. If you feel that their intention was not to damage you, if you feel that their intention was simply out of ignorance, maybe it's worth trying to explain to them why their words were so damaging and why you need their support. Maybe that's a relationship that's worth investing in and worth putting that work into, because that work does take so much energy, and when you're trying to recover from trauma, man, energy is in high demand. There's not a lot of it. So I think you have to choose if you are up to that task and if that relationship is worth that energy. Now, if it's not, that's okay. If it's a relationship that you feel like you need to let go, or that person is continually not being supportive or continually disrespecting what you're saying or your story, it is okay to let go of friendships. It is okay to say, I need some time or I need some space. It's okay not to give explanations. I know that sounds like a horrible thing to say. I know that sounds like being a terrible friend, but you need to take care of yourself first. And if people are damaging you and hurting you and stopping your healing and adding to depression, anxiety, PTSD, what have you with their words, it is really important that you attend to your mental health and to your survival. Another option, which is an option I often took, is just realizing that that person isn't a safe person to talk to about this subject. There are many friends who I told and I realized they didn't get it. I realized either they weren't going to get it or I didn't have the energy at the time to explain to them everything I needed to explain to them and to try to help them get it. And I just realized that we weren't going to talk about that. I realized that they were not going to be part of my support system. And we continued on in a friendship, minus that part. You know, we just didn't have that depth. We had more of a surface level friendship. So I think it comes down to what you're looking for out of a relationship. If you want a relationship to continue, if you want that person to be a support to you, I would encourage you to try to tell them why what they said was wrong, why it hurt you, maybe direct them to some resources if you can. If they're really close to you, maybe have them come to counseling with you. If it's too much, please don't feel bad about either not talking about that subject with that person anymore or cutting off that relationship for a time. Or explaining to them, why you need to cut off that relationship for a time. You need to take care of yourself first and foremost. The last thing I want to say is that people may have negative reactions, but people will have positive reactions as well. I found that at first when I was telling people, I didn't have a whole lot of great reactions, but the good ones I did have way outweighed the bad ones. The people I found who were in my support system, though they were fewer, were gold. They were the people who saved my life. They were so worth talking to. And so if you have a couple really negative reactions, it's important to deal with that. It's important to take care of yourself and to find help in dealing with their words. But I would encourage you not to give up on people and not to shut down and think that your story isn't worth hearing or to start believing their words, because if someone says anything that suggests guilt or shame or like it's your fault, they are not true. I promise you, their words are not true. What happened to you is not your fault. What reactions have you had? Have you had mostly positive, mostly negative, and how did you respond to them? I'm really interested to see, because I know everyone has a different experience with this. I'm Jo Beckwith and this is Trauma Talk. This is a channel where we talk about trauma, specifically sexual assault and domestic violence, PTSD, depression, mental illness, anxiety, you name it. I often have visitors all on this channel as well to interview, and we'll have some more coming up here really soon. So if you're interested in topics like that, I would love to see you subscribe and talk to you here in the future soon. Take care of yourself, and I will talk to you very soon.